Good morning. Are you ready for my solo? My name is Chris Walton, and I serve on the board of the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Vice President of Administration with a portfolio specifically with things like the facilities, the building grounds and building grounds, facilities, all that, and the underappreciated but always useful media team up there. We want to welcome everyone to our open and inclusive community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we explore these paths. First time and returning visitors, it is our custom to invite you to stand up and give your name and where you are from if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves? Ian?
My name is Mark. I'm from Glen Ellen.
Mark?
Hi.
My name is Paula, and I'm in Aurora, first time.
Welcome, Paul. Mark.
My name is Gio. Second time here. I'm grateful to be here.
Welcome, Joe. Very good. Welcome. Welcome to everyone visiting today. Everyone. Please join us after the service for coffee hour. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. I will be here along with many of our members. In addition, our minister, Reverend Michael Walker, our director of religious education, Steve Cooper, are present and will be happy to meet you. Today we have Ask Us Anything meeting, so we won't be in. Well, please join us in the founder's room.
No, it's here in the sanctuary.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Very good. My ad lib almost worked. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary should anyone feel the need to step out of the service for any reason. As we begin our service, please silence all electronic devices, and thank you for joining us this morning.
My heart is
Good morning. It's always fun to have the choir here. You all sound great. Thank you. Wanted to let our new guests know that our members of our congregation that are part of the Congregational Life Team host a coffee downstairs. So you go down those stairs and then downstairs again, right below here. It's a smaller, intimate space where new folks can get to know others. It's a little more intimidating in the social hall. And also the Ask Me Anything with the board will be here in the sanctuary during coffee hour. This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature. It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in a community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiworks. It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present in visions of growth and progress. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. I'd like to invite up one of our youth, Doug Mirabali, to light our chalice.
We light our chalice this morning for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing, I Can See Another's Woe.
You're going to please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
It is time to gather, and this is a chance for us to hear a story to help further the message of the service and also tie in with the religious education classes. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the Bell of Atri. So Atri is the name of a little town in Italy. It's a very old town and built halfway up the side of a steep hill. A long time ago, the king of Atri bought a large bell and had it hung up in a tower in the marketplace. A long rope that reached almost to the ground was fastened to the bell. The smallest child could ring the bell by pulling upon this rope. "It is the bell of justice," said the king. So at last, when everything was ready, the people of Atri had a great celebration. All the men and women and children came down to the marketplace to look at the bell of justice. It was a very pretty bell. It was polished until it looked almost as bright and yellow as the sun. "We're very excited to hear it," they said. Then the king came down the street. "Perhaps he will ring it," said the people, and everybody stood very still and waited to see what he would do. But he did not ring the bell. He did not even take the rope into his hand. When he came to the foot of the tower, he stopped and he raised his hand. "My people," he said, "do you see this beautiful bell? It is your bell, but it must never be rung except in the case of need. If any one of you is wronged at any time, you may come and ring the bell, and then the judges shall come together at once and hear your case and give you justice. Rich and poor, old and young, all alike may come, but no one must touch the rope unless they know that they have been wronged." Many years passed after this, and many times the bell had been rung in the marketplace, and the judges did come together, and many wrongs were righted, and many ill-doers were punished. But over years, the hemp rope was almost worn out. The lower part of it was all untwisted, and some of the strands were broken, and it became so short that only a tall person could reach it. "This will never do," said the judges one day. "What if a child should be wronged? They could not ring the bell to let us know it." So the judges gave orders for a new rope, but looking all over the town of Atri, they could not find any more rope. So they had to ask for it from across the mountain, but it would take days for it to actually get to Atri. And they're like, "What are we going to do? We can't go days without this rope. What if someone is wrong during this time?" "Let me fix it for you," said a man who stood by. And he ran into his garden, which was not too far away, and soon he came back with a long grapevine. "This will do for a rope." And he climbed up and fastened it to the bell, and the slender vine, with its leaves and tendrils still upon it, trailed to the ground. "Yes," the judges said, "it is a very good rope. Let it be as it is." Now, on the hillside above the village, there lived a man who once had been a brave knight. In his youth, he had ridden through many lands and he fought many a battle. And his best friend through all that time had been his horse, a strong, noble steed that had kept him safe through many a danger. But the knight, as he grew older, cared no more to ride into battle, and he did not care to do any more brave deeds. And he thought of nothing but gold. He became a miser. And over time, he sold all that he had, except for the horse, and went to live in a little hut on the hillside. And day after day, he sat amongst his money bags and planned how he might get more gold. And day after day his horse stood in his bare stall, half-starved and shivering with cold. "What is the use of keeping this lazy steed?" said the miser to himself one morning. "Every week it costs me more to keep him than he is worth. I wish I could sell him, but no one wants him. I can't even give him away. I'm just going to turn him out and let him defend for himself and pick grass by the roadside. If he starves to death, so much the better." So the brave old horse was turned out to find what he could amongst the rocks on the barren hillside. Lame and sick, he strolled along the dusty roads, glad to find a blade of grass or a thistle. The boys threw stones at him, the dogs barked at him, and in all the world there was no one to pity him. One hot afternoon, when no one was on the street, the horse chanced to wander into the marketplace. Not an adult nor child was there, for the heat of the sun had driven them all indoors, and the gates were wide open. The poor horse could roam where he pleased, and he saw the grapevine. And he saw the leaves and the tendrils that were upon it. So he went over and he thought, what a fine dinner. And he started to eat on the grapevine. But he couldn't pull the leaves off, and he was yanking and yanking. And suddenly the bells started to chime. And it seemed to say, "Someone has done me wrong. Someone has done me wrong. Oh, come and judge my case. Oh, come and judge my case, for I've been wronged." The judges heard it, and they put on the robes and went out through the hot streets to the marketplace. And they wondered who it could be that would ring the bell at such a time. And when they passed through the gate, they saw the old horse nibbling at the vine. "Ha!" cried one. "It's the miser's steed. He has come to call for justice, for his master, as everybody knows, has treated him most shamefully. And he shall have justice," cried one of them. Meanwhile, a crowd of men and women and children had come into the marketplace, eager to learn what causes the judges were to be tried that day. When they saw the horse, all stood in wonder. Then everyone was ready to tell how they had seen the horse wandering on the hills, unfed, uncared for, while his master sat at home counting his bags of gold. "Go bring the miser before us," said the judges. And when he came, they bade him stand and hear their judgment. "This horse has served you well for many years," they said. "He saved you from many a peril. He has helped you gain your wealth. Therefore, we order that 1/2 of all your gold shall be set aside to buy him shelter and food, a green pasture where he may graze, and a warm stall to comfort him in his old age." The miser hung his head and grieved to lose his gold. But the people shouted with joy, and the horse was led away to his new stall and a dinner such as he had never had in many a day. Please stand in body or spirit. Join us in singing hymn number 1057, "Go Lift It Up."
I think of myself as pretty self-sufficient. I don't always ask for help when I should. I don't always think of turning to another when I could. When I came here, I admit I was a little skeptical of the concept of whole church ministry created here last year. What I have learned is it has been a way for people of many ages and stages of life to come together and celebrate life and consider that which is worthy of our attention. As part of this whole church concept, our DRE, Steve Cooper, and I collaborated on a Sunday service recently, and it turned out to be one of the most fun I've ever been part of. Collaborating can create new opportunities for creativity. Working together can create new opportunities for community. And supporting all of this, as you, our generous members and friends, have been doing for so many years, can create the church experience you and I all aspire to have. If you are here for the first time, we invite you to let the offering bowl pass you by because you are our honored guests. And if you've made this your spiritual home, we thank you for your ongoing generosity. This morning's offering will now be received.
This reading is from a chapbook of poetry called Spilling the Light, written by Teresa Soto. Teresa is a UU minister and a lawyer who identifies as a queer, disabled person living with cerebral palsy. They started the whole movement to change standing on the side of love to less ableist language. They are now serving the First UU Church of Oakland, California. The Elephant in the Room, Every Single Room, by Teresa I. Soto. Worrying is like an elephant. The more someone tells you not to elephant, the more it becomes real and wrinkly, tooth and trunk. And anyway, did you even say you wanted an elephant taking up the whole entire living room? You never do when you're anxious. But anxiety didn't ask. Is content instead to put muddy boots on your velvet mental furniture. laughing, I'm concerned, when you actually care. Anxiety is like a song that gets stuck in your head, except the tune is off, and the words keep getting messed up, but you still can't get rid of it. The fear, the stress, the skin-crawling dread. Blessed are the anxious. Sorry that it's hard, and you're not always wrong that sometimes things fall apart and end up worse than when we started. Blessed are you when you try, fear gripping your arms as though it is afraid of losing you, even though what you know is that it's never far away. There is so much unseen labor in managing everything just under the surface. Blessed are you, the tired ones, the ones who bring along their elephants and still make room for what may be possible, for joy, for love, and for a future that may, even though we can't be sure of it, be even more abundant and full of every possibility of peace.
Very nice. Thank you. This may be hard to believe, but I plan out my sermon topics every summer prior to the beginning of the church year. So when I wrote the title of this sermon, Paying Attention While Rome Burns, I was unaware of any future impeachment proceedings in Washington, D.C., or any other controversies closer to home which arose between then and now. I find myself challenged to speak about the Soul Matters theme of attention without getting too bogged down in current events. A while ago, in one of my first services here, I made a passing comment about a current event of the day, which is actually still happening. I spoke about children being held in cages at the border and was surprised to receive a note asking me to not talk about politics. Well, I agree to an extent. I don't usually intend to talk about politics. I do, however, intend to talk about ethics and morality. To this day, I still believe it is morally reprehensible that our government and defense contractors have set up cages for over 5,000 children. I honestly don't give a damn that their parents don't have visas. It is abhorrent to treat children worse than dogs in a kennel. And I don't think I'm ever going to change that opinion. But it has also reminded me of a deeper philosophical concern. We say all politics is personal. I believe it's true, and I have my personal beliefs, as I'm sure you do as well. However, we also have a long-standing custom in this country, supposedly, about the separation of church and state. And this is why I try not to spend too much time talking politics, while I do spend a great deal of time thinking and speaking about morality. The elephants in the room, as my colleague Teresa Soto described in the reading shared earlier. So today I focus on the morality of apathy, of not paying attention to things which are truly unjust, of focusing on first world problems when it seems that all of Rome is burning. While Rome burns, perhaps you have heard the saying about Nero fiddling while Rome burned. It's a reference to a historically inaccurate tale which has persisted in public imagination anyway. According to History.com, this phrase refers to a time when in July of 64 AD, a great fire ravaged Rome for 6 days, destroying 70% of the city and leaving half of its population homeless. According to a well-known expression, Rome's emperor at the time, the decadent and unpopular Nero, fiddled while Rome burned. The expression has a double meaning. Not only did Nero play music while his people suffered, but he was an ineffectual leader in a time of crisis. It's been pretty easy to cast blame on Nero, who had many enemies and is remembered as one of history's most sadistic leaders. Never mind that violins and fiddles did not exist yet back in the first century. This apocryphal story gave voice to criticisms of a society in which the elite had become decadent, while impoverished people suffered mightily and painfully. It was a criticism of a cruelty which saw people die for sport, such as in the Colosseum built in the generation after Nero and the Great Fire in Rome, for example. The fire cleared out lots of land, and many fantastic structures were built on the now barren land, leading some Romans to believe a conspiracy theory about the origins of the fire. True story. And this story was also a criticism of the tax burden placed on the poor while Nero and other elites built their great palaces. It was a criticism of the hunger engendered by poverty as well. Fiddling while Rome burns has come to have meaning in any society in which its supposedly great leaders seem to be ineffectual or inconsiderate of the masses. It is easy to extrapolate this idea and think of natural disasters such as hurricanes, or, very on point, the huge wildfires which have been ravaging my home state of California. Of course, these criticisms are not confined to ancient Rome or to a modern-day Rome. Criticism of injustice has seemingly been a staple of life in every culture and every time. In the prophetic, social justice-oriented strand of liberal Christianity, there was a preacher who bridged from Mahatma Gandhi to Martin Luther King Jr. and many years after, the Reverend Howard Thurman. He was a voice for civil rights before MLK became the face of it. Thurman spoke about the African American experience in words universalizing his sentiments and touching the lives of people in many cultures and races. I'd like to share some of his words from his World War II era sermon, Religion in a Time of Crisis. Thurman wrote, "Curious indeed is the fact that at a time of crisis, we must be constantly reminded that the crisis does not mark the end of all things. It is of the nature of crisis so to dominate the horizon of our thoughts that everything that is not directly related to the crisis situation seems irrelevant and without significance. The crisis throws everything out of proportion, out of balance, and the balance seems always superficially to be on the side of disaster, on the side of negation." Does this sound familiar? When I listen to the news, I hear echoes of Thurman in the back of my mind, wondering why there is all this talk of one thing while Rome burns down around us and no one seems to notice. The world is burning. The ice is melting and the oceans are rising. The climate changes, but who notices? And human society is polarized, not just in this country, but in many countries. Governments rise and fall, and in the midst of it all, it is the people who suffer. The people are in trouble, but who notices? Some do, but some choose to look away as if it were not happening. Apathy is one explanation for what is happening in the world around us, I suppose. If you like words, here's an etymology. Pathos is the root, meaning suffering, and the prefix a means without. Apathy is literally without suffering, and this is why people ignore the ills of the world. It begins to make sense if you think, why borrow someone else's suffering? What does it have to do with me? If I avoid and ignore whatever it is, it will not touch me, it will not affect me, it will not matter in my personal life here and now. I've spoken before of family members of mine who adore President Trump and who seem to believe President Obama was the Antichrist. I also have others close to me who choose to never watch the news or read the paper, who stopped voting decades ago, and who have no clue what is happening anywhere in the world except in their neighborhoods. It hardly makes sense to me, but I am a news junkie, reading news online several times a day. I simply cannot look the other way and pretend what is happening is not. Because I'm not leading social justice causes at this church, because I was brought here to do other things, it may surprise some to hear me speak so passionately about injustices, but this is a driving force for me. This was a major factor in my call to ministry, in fact. It seems to me it is ever so easy to not pay attention to things that are truly unjust. Perhaps this is due to a sense of helplessness over everything else happening. Perhaps it is anxiety, and I wonder whether or not Soto was right in the reading when they wrote, "Blessed are the anxious." What I do know is we are a UU movement full of activists and passionate people across this country and world who speak out about justice and injustice all the time. Sometimes I fear we overlook the egregious injustices, unconsciously feeling we cannot make a difference. So it seems like we often latch on to perceived injustices, no matter how small, perhaps unconsciously thinking, oh yes, here I can make a difference. But about what, I wonder? If it is so small, if it makes no change to the rising oceans or the sinking morality of a police state, then why do we give it so much energy? What is the drive to make incremental or minute changes when a literal sea change is required? Too often, I feel we are focusing on first world problems. I know I can get pretty annoyed if the Wi-Fi is not working. Last night, I was so concerned about the strange car in our driveway, I walked downstairs and stared at them until they left. Then I came up here and wrote this, and I'm like, what's my problem? How tiresome is it to hear of privileged white people complaining about a person of color going about their daily life as if it's some affront to society? Or worse, how upsetting it is when another innocent person has been shot because their color felt threatening to another. The big problems run into the little problems. It becomes difficult to separate what really needs our attention and what is faux outrage for the sake of feeling one is making a difference about something, making a difference about anything at all. We bring our own elephants to the room sometimes. And there I go, getting bogged down in current events again. Thurman cautioned against throwing things out of proportion, so every little thing now seems part of some crisis. One might think that this is happening in Washington now. And so some might be well advised to heed Thurman's advice lest they blow up the entire process happening there now. One might think such little things blown up into full-fledged crises are happening all over. It seems to be the water we fish are swimming in right now, every time we turn on the news or talk to our friends. Someone might be thinking, if this dude is so sure Rome is burning, why hasn't he gotten out? Why not move to Canada or something? Well, some city planners and firefighters have long known, as well as many other wise people, is if we are paying attention and if we respond appropriately when our response is so needed, we can perhaps save the city. Maybe Rome does not have to burn, which means we need to stop fiddling around. Maybe we can let go of the little stuff and focus on what really matters, because the world really needs us. I know, as I said before, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm saying things now many of you have been thinking for some time. What I wish to add is we can all, myself included, so easily get caught up in our own apathy or panic or disgust. Our elephant is so massive and all-consuming of our attention, we can see nothing else. We might start to think it is easiest to just complain to our friends or send off missives to perceived powers that be elsewhere, but not actually do the work right here, right now, which makes a difference in our own lives and the lives of people we care about. But for all the people who are apathetic and doing nothing, such as some of my own family, I can try to reach so so many other people, this many people or more, and convince them to get up, get out, and do something to make a difference. And this is what I'm asking you to do too. Don't sit by and complain to your neighbor. Ask your neighbor to help you do something in this world to make a difference. It's inspired again by Thurman's prophetic strand of Christianity. We might put it in these terms: feed those who are hungry, clothe those who are naked, and heal those who are sick. In today's terms, we're called to find ways to reduce the root causes of poverty, respond compassionately to immigration needs, make health care accessible, and reduce our ever so divisive politics. I cannot tell you all the ways how to do this work. Why not? Because there are many ways to be worked out by many hands and to be spoken of by many voices. We all are needed to make this world a better place. Let us do this work together. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. Our closing hymn is Turn the World Around. You're invited to rise in body or in spirit. Good job. That's not an easy song, but it's a fun one. Yes, the world is woven with worry and pain, and yet the threads are not just tangled with trouble. Grace and the golden strings of courage are always waiting to be pulled, to be tied tenderly by committed hands across the wounds that divide us. May those hands include ours. May we stay ever engaged in this precious work of reweaving the world. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. Go now in peace.